Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Innovation Podcast, your source for all things innovation. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Josh Cooper on the line, and he's founder and CEO over at SKOOP. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, great to have a Spartan and a Michigander on the line all at once, so happy to have you on. And I want to get into what you're doing over at SKOOP. But before we do that, let's get a little bit further into your background. So how did you get started in your career in business?
Sure. Well, first off, it's great to be talking to a fellow Spartan. Go green.
Go white. Do it.
There you go. I guess as far as entrepreneurship goes, it's really in my blood. I was one of those kids really young who would ask an annoying amount of questions to the adults in my life. And I vaguely remember sometime around middle school, I would ask harder questions, more why things are the way that they are, and that was usually kind of my curiosity was alluding to why are problems in existence today. And I think a lack of ability to answer that question from the elders in my life kind of pushed me down this direction of trying to figure out solutions to some of the hardest problems. And so early on in my life, I kind of thought that I would go more of like a public policy route. But as I got older, I kind of realized if you really want to drive change and make a difference and possibly solve a global issue, one of the best ways to possibly do that is to start a business that builds a product or a service that's mission-driven and focused on solving somebody's pain points and making the world a better place. And so somewhere around the 7th, 8th grade, I really started to tap into that, and that's when my entrepreneurial itch really started to kick in.
Man, that's awesome. And so speaking of that, I think that's also a great transition. Let's get into what you're doing over at SKOOP. Tell us a little bit more about the company, please. Sure.
The SKOOP today that we know is very different than the SKOOP I started my freshman year of college. And I think that's really important to note because if you don't focus very carefully and closely at the market trends, and if you don't pivot and evolve, you die. And so the story of SKOOP really goes, my first couple of days at Michigan State University, I lived over on the east side of campus, and I had a lot of friends over on the west side. And Michigan State's a big, beautiful campus, and it can be pretty far to cross the campus, over 2 miles. And so for me, it started with the realization that I had the pain of getting from point A to point B. And that was challenging for myself and other students. And more importantly, it was expensive to do so. And this was in a day before, micro-mobility blew up and we had burden-line scooters and Ubers were still surging. And so my initial thought process, being a digital marketing guy, was why is it that I don't have to pay access to some of our favorite businesses like, the Facebooks, Googles, YouTubes of the world? And would it be possible to leverage the power of digital ad fueled business model and bring it to the physical world to offset something like the cost of short distance mobility? And so it was really kind of this business experiment of mine to see if that was possible. And the reason why I wanted to do that was, A, it was a real pain point for thousands of students figuring out how to get across campus affordably and effectively. Number two, I come from a marketing and design background. And so I'm constantly thinking of new experiential ways for businesses to generate brand awareness. And I figured if we could build a fleet of bike taxis with digital screens on the insides and outsides of them, then businesses could leverage those high traffic screens to promote marketing messages and branding messages. And the revenue generated from that end could fuel and subsidize the cost of the ride. And so we started to do that for a couple of years, and we grew those fleets. And in 2018, we became the first company, the first micro-mobility business in the world to completely offset the cost of short-distance travel, thanks to the power of digital advertising. It wasn't long before others in the industry started reaching out and asking us how they too could do this and make their rides for free. They were asking us questions, what screens are you using? What software are you using? And that stuff was really hard for us to figure out. And then kind of in 2019, a light bulb went off, and I had a realization here, and I was thinking to myself, well, Uber doesn't own any of the vehicles, and Airbnb doesn't own any real estate, and DoorDash doesn't own any restaurants. Why do we own and operate the mobility services when there's such a need in the market for a simple way to run cloud-based signage for digital billboards? And so that's the realization and the light bulb that effectively for the next year pushed us down one of our biggest pivots yet. That was the pivot away from providing the mobility services and providing the hardware and the software that enables anybody in the gig economy to build their own digital signage network for the purposes of monetization and brand awareness. And so today, we are one of the industry-leading providers of digital billboards and digital billboard signage for moving vehicles, specifically at the bike taxi level. And what we're finding is our app, SKOOP Signage, that you can pretty much plug into any screen, including TVs, to turn it into a revenue-generating digital billboard. It has value outside of the pedicab bike taxi space as well. We've seen malls, strip malls, regional malls, small airports, medium-sized airports, restaurants, convenience stores, all types of different brands and businesses use SKOOP Signage to build a digital signage network throughout their high-traffic business or venue and effectively turn their empty wall space into a new source of revenue for them.
Man, that makes so much sense. I love it. And I love that you made like that next level connection of what kind of model would make sense to provide. And all you did really was, not taking this away from you, I mean, but it's really smart. And I love when entrepreneurs realize this, is all you did was there was a need. They were calling you saying, hey, how do you do this? How do you do this? And after a while, you're like, wait a minute, why don't I do that? Because everybody's asking for that. And then you can expand the market. And you were thinking more of an outward focusing on other people thing than thinking about focusing inward. Because you could have been thinking not with abundance, and you could have said like not taking those calls and thought, why would I help somebody else? Like, why would I help my competitors, quote unquote, build their bike network or their network? Like, why would I do that? It took us a lot of work. There's a lot of soft capital. But instead of doing that, not only did you help them, but now you ended up changing it to where you're like, wow, this is a real need. I have a real advantage here. I'm good at it. And let me focus more on that and help other people build their network. It's amazing.
Totally. Yeah, you're spot on with that. I think initially there was some hesitation and thought there. Well, wait a second.
The first call is not going to be like that. This isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Sure. You got to make money. We know the first call didn't go like that, but whether it was the first or the 10th, you got over that mental hurdle.
Totally. And I think for me personally, I've always loved the idea of building businesses that help other people run and manage their businesses. and that's kind of, I've always loved the concept of social entrepreneurship and building businesses for a real purpose to solve mission-driven problems. And so I think that close attention to that mindset is what allowed us to get over that mental hurdle of, wait a second, why would we give our recipe to the rest of the industry, and completely flipped it to, wait a second, that's exactly what we want to do.
That's awesome, man. So Josh, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about SKOOP, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Our website is definitely a solid source. It's just simply scoop.digital. I like to joke and say we dropped the .com and left it in 2019. But our website with our blog is a great source of content and news. Our LinkedIn as well as our Instagram is also a fantastic way to see where we are. Our team travels a lot. We go to a lot of industry trade shows, and we're constantly onboarding new customers and featuring them. So social is also a great way to keep up with us, and we can be reached at just simply scoop.digital, and that's SKOOP.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Josh, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you for coming on and teaching us more about your evolution of what you're doing over at SKOOP. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Innovation, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what you're working on and what kind of businesses you have going on. And Josh, thanks again for coming on the show.